Good evening. I'm Karen Kaufman, President of the New York State Society for Clinical Social Work. I'm very pleased to welcome you all to an exciting annual event celebrating our student scholars. We're very proud of their accomplishments and look forward to having them join us in the Society and to their future contributions in the field of clinical social work. Have a wonderful evening and congratulations to you all. And I'm going to turn things over to your hosts now.
Tell me a little bit about how you came to social work and where you'd like to go.
Well, social work kind of found me, and it's always been there. It's kind of like we both found each other. And, looking at what I do as an artist and understanding that there was a catharsis that occurred in finding our characters and building this structure and understanding ourselves and finally like letting it out, kind of like Moreno does with psychodrama. Seeing how that really helped me, and also seeing so many people within the arena that I work in as an actor. There's so many traumatized actors out there. We know how to get into that method, but we don't know how to get out. And it showed me, as actors, as filmmakers, as just people in society, we need more mental health therapists.
Your earlier life experiences had a lot of impact on some of your later decisions. You talked about also maturing, but it was a little unusual and really informative. So tell us a little bit about that.
So I loved my childhood. I loved every second of it. And as I reflect back as an adult, I'm even more proud of how I grew up and thankful for my mom for leading the path, because she essentially did. Her job at the time, she was a house parent, and she essentially worked in a group home for individuals with intellectual disabilities, adults. And my family and I lived in an attached apartment. So from the time I was 2 until I was 11, we lived there. And I would go to work with my mom, and we'd open our apartment door, and there were my 10 best friends, and I knew no different. My mom and I joke to this day that at that age, I used to think that every single house functioned that way. And I would go to my friends' houses and say, and I would call them the guys, even though they were male and female residents, but they were my guys. And so my mom and I laughed, because I would go to my friend's house and say, where are your guys? They were just my best friends, and that was my expectation. Growing up with those individuals taught me so much. It taught me patience and understanding and love and compassion. And from those early ages, I don't think I ever saw myself in a role that wasn't people-facing, that wasn't helping individuals and seeing people for who they were and helping them become their best selves.
Why did you become a social worker?
I wanted to help people, but I've always wanted to help people, and it wasn't until recently that I truly felt my calling. I was sitting at the Starbucks, and a little girl who was like 4 or 5 years old was housing a little bit, like moving around. Her mom had already been like, stop it. And what did she do? She knocked over like the caution wet sign, and the mother instinctively spanked her, which I'm Latina, and it's common in our culture to spank your children. I don't practice it myself, but it's pretty common. It's like what I grew up on. And then the little girl was obviously upset. So she goes to the corner to console herself because the mom was being so reactive to her, right? And then the mom's like, let's go. So then the older sister goes to say something to the little girl, and the little girl immediately smacks her away. And it made me realize that that is where I want to help people, because we have to stop the reactivity when it comes to parenting. We have to give our children a voice, help parents understand that our children matter. Who they are is important, and what they're doing is what they want to say to you. Maybe they're not verbal enough to communicate their needs and their wants to you. And the only way to make adults that are able to do that is by working with your children.
What made you choose social work?
You know, it was something that I was always interested in, despite the fact that I didn't pursue it. I went down a completely different road. I studied public policy, which is valuable for you know, this work, but it's much more macro, obviously. And, you know, then ended up becoming a corporate consultant
There you go.
for many years, you know,
Right,
you know, like worked my way up the corporate ladder, as they say, and, you know, got to a place where it was just a calling. It was just a continuous sort of like beckoning, you know, to come back to the thing that I genuinely really loved. And, you know, in every instance, you know, because I did like a little bit of journalism before I went to pursue my first graduate degree.
Right.
And I really loved that for the micro engagement. This avenue I think was particularly interesting to me because of the fact that it does contextualize like human suffering in a way that I feel like other fields potentially might not.
I just wanted to find out a little bit more about you, and that you could share with our audience and everybody who's watching what even drew you to becoming a social worker.
Behavioral health has been an interest of mine for many, many years, and it's something I studied on my own and explored through volunteer work, both first in working with individuals in recovery from substance abuse, and then later on with survivors of interpersonal violence and sexual assault. And through the volunteer work experiences that I had, I realized that while I loved the clinical piece, it was there, and how in the first of the trauma, when I worked in substance abuse, I saw that there was a pattern. I saw how many, because I was working with young adults, that these individuals had trauma in childhood. And I'm like, you know, if we can get to these, you know, individuals before they start, you know, externalizing with, right, if we can really begin the healing process in childhood. And I began to study Judith Herman's work, Bessel van der Kolk, and really get, you know, really passionate about trauma. And that's a passion of mine clinically. When I began to learn about the, you know, strength-based perspective and empowering our clients, and really coming at things not from a pathologizing direction, but from a, okay, like, how can we look at this together? You know, like, is this a challenge or a threat? Helping people find skills, and then really supporting them and letting them know you're the one doing the work, kind of led me to know that social work was the path for me.
Tell us a little bit about your work with JM, because there were a lot of layers and a lot of challenges, pandemic or otherwise. So
when I met her, there were no presenting issues really, but it was kind of one of those things that my supervisor and I both agreed that there was more to the story. Like, you know, she seemed a little timid on video, and she didn't really speak in English. You just felt like there was more, and you wanted to help and know, like, how can I extract this? What's going on here? And so that was one of the challenges, the language barrier at first. The other challenge was, you know, I would speak to her mom, and her mom would be like, yeah, I would love for her to have these services. Mom was very helpful, I will say that. She was very open and would tell me things to help the process. But then sometimes I felt like what mom said didn't always match up with what my child said at the moment. But again, interpretations are different. The girl also struggled because of language within school. She struggled getting services at first in terms of getting like speech service, ESL.
It was quite a complex case. He presented incredibly well. You could sit with this child and he was just so impressive and so insightful and intelligent, and you had to look past that to really understand the deeper side of the mental health issues. Something that you pointed out was the difference between my upbringing and where I now live and where I interned, and something that I had to quickly recognize, I suppose, within myself was that living in a new area, working in a new area, I was not going to be familiar with all of the resources around me. And as social workers, we tend to rely on the resources around us, you know, the community resources and the external and who we know. And one of the lessons I guess I took away from it was that we have to be creative in creating our own resources and redefining what a resource may look like. And while I wasn't in the position to make a phone call or make these bigger, I guess, organizational changes to help this child, what I could do was seek him out in the hallway. The teachers were so forthcoming with allowing me to push into the classroom whenever I wanted to just grab him for 20 minutes, check in, play a quick game, which he always beat me at, and just give him that support. And at one point I had to sit back and say to myself, I'm a resource too.
This particular client of mine stuck with me. She was a Yemeni immigrant to New York City, 16 at the time. She had so much energy and so much to say. Right. And she made the appointment for herself, which is amazing, right? Like for someone her age, and in that community where there's such a stigma around therapy and mental health. I remember she called from her roof because that was the privacy that she could get. And it was just, she was so dedicated on the one hand, despite the fact that she was going through so much, couldn't wake up, she couldn't, she couldn't find any pleasure out of, the things that she would usually find pleasure from. And I remember, in many hours of supervision, just saying, I carried her with me. And I hear that from a lot of practitioners, like you don't leave your client when the session's over. Right. And I really felt that. The tragedy about, I think, in being an intern is time's up, like the spring is over, a semester is over, that's it. Right. You have to terminate with clients. The difficulty here was because of the age difference and because she's an adolescent and because parts of her reminded me of myself. Yes. It was very hard to keep that like in check, Right. To not just be like sort of the parent figure, like, oh, what are you talking about? Of course, of course. Right. She ended up finishing, right. But she ended up finishing without the expectation that she should finish.
You also did a great job of describing how important you feel it is to have both a macro and micro perspective in clinical practice.
I'll be transparent in saying that I have always been a bit more micro-minded. From the moment I realized I wanted to go the mental health route, I wanted my own office, I wanted to work one-on-one with people, and that was it. And I will say that Delphi has done such an incredible job in exposing me to courses that taught me about macro work, and not only exposed me to it, but really taught me the importance of it and showed me the link between micro and macro work. And I'm happy that my first internship was in more of a macro setting, with it being a school setting, because again, it challenged my thought processes and helped me understand again the connection between the larger picture and the smaller. And now where I am in a private practice, I kind of giggle at myself sometimes, but almost out of a means of being proud of myself, of that I'll work with a client and I start to think to myself, well, what systems are impacting them? Or what barriers are in their way, right? And that's more of a macro type thought process. Something that has kept my interest in macro is one of my closest friends in my cohort. He is extremely macro minded. You couldn't pay him all the money in the world to work micro. Like, no, he wants nothing to do with it. And he's like, I forget what he's doing for an internship, but I think is interning with one of the state senators. Like, he is.
Yes, that's been known to happen for sure.
Yeah, so he really is in his happy place. So him and I will spend hours on the phone talking from a micro lens compared to a macro lens. And Courtney, you have to make sure you bring this to a private practice setting. And I'm like, so-and-so, make sure you bring this to Capitol Hill, you know?
At our first meeting, my instructor did offer her a pamphlet as to what DBT was and what it helps with. And I let her know, that again, this also helps with anxiety and eating issues and anger issues and letting go and trauma. And she did have trauma in her life. She was experiencing trauma.
I'm sure there are many members of our society who aren't familiar with that. Could you just explain the S, the E, and the T a little bit?
Yes. So SET stands for support, empathy, and truth. And they're just ways to really discuss and talk with these people. Again, they're splitters. They split on different levels, but there's a splitting behavior that occurs. If you're not with me, you're against me. I can love you, and I'm not going to deal with you. I'm going to idealize you, and then I'm just going to devalue you if you don't agree with what I'm saying, because I'm so scared inside that you're going to leave me and abandon me. S is for support. So you can go over and say, wow, I'm hearing you right now, and I'm really worried with how you're feeling. In that moment, you're looking at this person and you're saying to that person, you're not just a plain person to me. You're somebody that's real. I see you. I'm part of your experience. I'm worried for you. And I could see what's happening. And that person at that point in time doesn't think, oh, you're thinking that I'm some guinea pig, because you'll get that a lot. I don't want to talk to you. What do you know about me? Who do you think that you are? How many times have we come in contact with that in therapy? Who do you think you are? I'm not just your patient. You don't want to listen to what I have to say. To say, I see you, that worries me. It's that support. I'm here to talk about this. Let's explore this. Let's really and truly, let me understand your story. And that in that moment of support, empathy, and truth, you could see this transformation. And it's not easy for these individuals. I had a client and I would always bring up the feel wheel. It's the wheel that has all the emotions on it. Like, how do you feel? Where are we at with the feel wheel? And it came to a point where when they were wanting to express how they would feel, they'd open up their phone and they look at the feel wheel and they're like, well, I feel so disengaged because of this, and this. So it became an automatic go-to for them.
It is an amazing internship setting and a volunteer setting. It's the Center for Change, right, in New City in Rockland County.
The Center
They
for
have
Change on Johnson's Lane. And there's a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week hotline. And it's a phenomenal organization that I wish more people knew about. So that's why I had to put it there.
Absolutely. And you probably had, even if you didn't get to work in all aspects, but there are children, there are therapists who work with the mother's children and with the women, and there are legal assistants. So you really got to see the whole system at play as well, and not just the individual clinical piece.
Exactly. And that was very powerful and moving. And it worked out really nice because my second year, I was in a completely different setting working.
And where
with, I was with for a community-based what's called a PROS program. It's it's funded by the Department of Office of Mental Health. And it's a wonderful program that really helps individuals who have severe mental illness help find their strength and help them connect with the community and help them transition into a place where they know they need to take their medication. They come to an acceptance. I have this illness, it's not going away, but I can still have a life. I had rounds every morning, brand rounds once a week with our psychiatrists and our nurses. And I really got to see the other, a different, very, very different clinical picture working with, and
Sure,
and
different. Yeah.
it was really, it was really phenomenal. I was very fortunate because a lot of people didn't get, clinical experiences both years with the pandemic and everything. And I'm very fortunate that I had that opportunity both years.
I think what I loved most about the elementary school was the age group and working with kids. I've always loved that and the challenge that came with that. So I was in a rural community, which is different from a community in which I grew up. So I kind of had to shift my mindset a little bit, and that was a learning curve for me, understanding the challenges that may have come with their upbringing or the environments that they were involved in, and learning the family systems. And I feel that so much of the curriculum that Adelphi has and everything that I was learning in the classroom was so useful in a school setting, because school settings are complex.
Diana, tell me a little bit about where you are now. What is your current internship?
Next semester, I will be at Seven Summit Pathways. It is a place that I actually worked when I was younger as, an assistant. So I was helping with the auditing process, and I was helping, doing urine analyses and all of these beautiful things. And now I get to go back as a student, and I actually get to help with groups, and I get to see patients now and work with somebody that was my superior. And it's a really interesting process to go through. It is an addiction center. They tend to utilize or work with individuals that are from college all the way. I mean, when I was there, we had somebody that was 75.
What is your second year placement?
So I'm at the Institute for Contemporary Psychotherapy, ICP. I worked with clients obviously last year, but
yeah,
I don't know. I mean, I was just assigned 2 patients just an hour before this conversation. And
wow.
I'm really nervous about that. So wish me luck.
You'll be fine. You just, just kind of be you.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all you got.
Right, exactly.
Try to be someone else. Yeah, it's not going to work, and they'll pick it up.
How would you say that this measured up to what you expected? You had your first placement, you had ideas and expectations about being a social worker. How did it measure up?
It was just a great experience overall. Sometimes it was more difficult because you're at an agency, but you're also placed within a school. So you try to figure out, like, where do I really stand? You're at the cusp. Am I with the school, or am I with the agency, or am I like a mixture of both? And that was a little bit difficult, especially when we were remote. But I'm really thankful for the advanced generalist practice that you don't have to pick, because that way when I graduate, I know that maybe I tried this field, but I'm open to so much. And I'm prepared to work with other fields versus just one-track mind.
What was most surprising about the field and entering social work school as a first-year student?
I think what was most surprising, and this is actually what drew me to social work, but it continues to surprise me, is how broad the world of social work is and how many different paths you can take within this career. And in the beginning, that can be really overwhelming. But I think it's important to remember that within your first semester, you're not expected to choose a career path. I think also what was surprising to me was certainly the workload. I mean, social work, it's not easy. It's challenging. You have to be constantly learning and constantly open to learning. That's a super important piece when you're a student. And then also, I think I was surprised at how quickly I became aware of my own biases. And I was the kind of person that didn't think I had any biases, I think, and I think a lot of people think that way. But I guess considering my upbringing, I thought that I had this super open, worldly view. And at the end of the day, I grew up on Long Island, and I was a little sheltered, right? And I'm very, very thankful for the academic path that I've chosen, because yes, it's taught me concepts, and yes, I've learned about research, but I view the world in such a different way.
I think the thing that really that I got is, and I don't know, I hope this doesn't sound too abstract, the idea of ambivalence, and that, you know, things can be many different things at the same
Sure.
time.
Yeah.
So it could be both. I could both dread working with this client, but also feel so fulfilled working with this client.
Sure.
You know, that I could be very confused about a case, but also maybe closer to, I don't want to say the truth, but closer to where I need to be. The idea of the two-person psychology, and that there isn't one truth, just holding so many different parts, you know, of myself, of the client, of the work, and parts that are just, you would be shocked that they're in the
Right.
same person.
Yeah.
And to give each of them a microphone, you know, like to hear them, I think was a very important learning. And I learned it both in the training, in the theory, and in the practice.
Right.
And in my own work, you know,
Yeah.
a little bit of self-disclosure, but yeah, I didn't realize that there were these many people in the world, or I guess in New York City, in Manhattan, whatever, as local
Right.
as we want to get, that cared so much about other people. Like, I think
Mm.
that
Yeah.
was really beautiful.
You are discussing in your paper the termination aspect and how you prepared for that termination session.
Yes.
Words about that.
From the beginning, she knew that she wasn't going to be, we have COVID long haulers, right? So there is no, responsibly, we don't have therapy long haulers if we're proper social work clinicians. We want to look at what we're doing. We want to set an intervention and then see if it works. And then it terminates. So she knew from day one, this is going to last a certain amount of time. And I'll let you know when that time comes around, and we'll talk about certain things. She knew that that time was coming. Now, the integral part was, because she had borderline personality issues, it's rejection. It's rejection and having a fear of that end. What would it mean if I were to let her go?
There were countless times that my supervisor and I would sit and talk from an organizational standpoint, and unfortunately the inequities and sometimes where our power just, you know, like stopped, and we just didn't have power over certain things, and how in an ideal world a school district like this should probably have 4 or 5 social workers, maybe a social worker per grade level. But again, I think it can be really easy to sit down and criticize and create, you know, lists of things that we do need, but sometimes it takes courage to sit back and have that insightful moment to look within yourself and say, but what can I do in this environment? And for me, like I said, I was limited, and I had that attitude for a little bit of time, and then I kind of swapped my mindset and thought to myself, no, you are making a change. You are doing what you can do, and you should be proud of that, for the creativity and still providing support for this child, instead of just saying, you know, no, this is too complex, I can't do anything.
Even speaking to her about the immigration stuff, Mom was hesitant, because this can be a little bit tricky. You know, you never know who's going to say something to me. And even asking her questions about the trip, the journey to get here, I was like, okay, sometimes we exaggerate the truth, even as adults, right? And so I asked Mom, and I said, hey, you know, your child's kind of mentioned these things. Was she really there? Like, are these things that you experienced on your journey? And she was like, yes, this is things. And I was shocked. That was hard for me to work with, right? Oh my goodness, how can people actually experience this? How can children experience this? But Mom was very receptive throughout the whole process. She wanted the best for her child.
That was the plus, that she embraced you and she felt safe with you as well. That speaks to a lot of things.
It was kind of a strange year. Were you a Zoom? Yeah.
Well, so
That
my
was a
first,
surprise.
so I actually, I did the extended program over 3
Okay.
years. For my first year and a half, I was completely in person, and my internship was completely in person. Then the second half of my my school experience. I was on Zoom, and my second internship was the whole program was on Zoom. And so that was really different and interesting. So I sort of got to see it on both sides. Again, fortunate about that, and even have the experience of working with my clients my first year, and then making the transition from in-person to telehealth. And and then having the experience the next year of being like, okay, these people don't know me. Now I'm starting really, can I, and asking myself, can I do that? Can I make that therapeutic alliance when you've never seen me? And thankfully, it did happen. And I worked with some incredible clients.
Have you gone in person at all in your classes?
Yes. So fortunately, I signed up for 2 in-person classes this semester.
Oh, great. Okay.
So we're able to go to class, and I swear, I mean, even with a commute that's an hour each way.
Where do you live?
I live in Queens.
Oh,
so it's like, it's like a 50-minute, door
Right.
to door.
What a time to be a social worker during a pandemic, during, one day the school is open, one day it's not, one day you're hybrid, one day you're in person. And so what do you think the impact of all of that had on your work?
I think living through it, having had similar circumstances, helps me be more empathetic with the clients, because I can understand, I can relate. And I definitely enjoyed our in-person sessions a lot more, because we would have a lot more interaction versus the telehealth ones.
And then you had to go back to the virtual after you were doing in person. So what was that
Yes.
like for both of you, for her, for you?
I think it was
Confusing.
hard. Yeah, it's a setback. Because like I said in the beginning, her technology skills weren't amazing. So sometimes we weren't able to hear each other, or maybe she was trying to show me a video, but I can't see the video. So then we have to figure it out, like work together. It was hard sometimes. She was severely afraid. That was like her number one fear, of being separated from her mom. And that would keep her up at night sometimes. It was difficult to walk through it. When we finally figured it out, it was because of the trip that her and her mother made, the journey that they went on to get to the United States. Because she was with her.
She was here about 4 years. Oh, her mother, she came with her, and the mother's partner came earlier.
Yes, so the mother's partner came earlier, and then the mother and JM crossed together. But it was still a pretty treacherous journey. She was a young child to do the journey, and you hear adults talk about it.
It must have been terrifying. And again, we were in a political climate that you've got to really worry. And people were anxious and depressed before the pandemic. And then kids like this, they're worried with good reason. They see kids separated from their parents at the border.
One of the blessings was that her school was very diverse, and they talked about social justice issues a lot. And one of the classes that was led throughout all of the grades was social emotional academic development. And during those classes, diversity, racism, equity, equality, all those topics were continuously touched upon throughout their education.
It was also an interesting time because as social workers, as we're really diving into better understanding of, things like critical race theory, oppression theory, cultural competence, as I mentioned, it was a very highly charged number of years with some really important. And again, I feel that while at times, I think it exhausted all of us, our professor, but it really brought about hard, important conversations.
And you were processing almost in real time.
100%. And it pushed me to learn to become more comfortable with looking into my countertransference without judging myself, and really doing that introspective work that as therapists we have to do. Otherwise, we're bringing ourselves into the room. And it was the challenges that our whole world was facing, sort of, I think, for me anyway, allowed me to go deeper and become more vulnerable without criticizing myself. And I feel really fortunate for that, because I think that's something we work on our entire careers, obviously, with supervision and just, my own therapy. There's certain things I would process there, some things with my supervisor. I just think that's it's integral. Taking trauma, which again is an area of passion for me, and then really having to face a lot of these, I'm a white woman in white skin, and I met my white fragility, and I met my racism, and I got to feel the feeling like, no, it can't be me, and then push through it, which changed me.
For new students entering social work school, what advice would you give if if someone came to you and said, "Oh, you went to social work school. What should I look forward to? What would be helpful?" What would you say to that student?
Two things. I don't know what it is with the two things today, but
it's all right.
One, your peers are your best asset. And I have been so fortunate to have, sort of organically built relationships with peers, with members of my cohort, and
right.
which is very difficult in this online realm.
Yeah, sure.
But they were a lifeline for me. We talk about, some of our questions, our cases, ourselves. It's hard. It's a hard thing. It's a hard thing to do. And, when we're feeling burnt out, I think just the type of person that's attracted to this career, we need a lot of validation. So it's like, I don't know, I'm feeling burnt out. Maybe it's just me. No, I'm also feeling burnt out.
Right.
Did you take a walk today? Did you, maybe you need to just rest for tonight. Don't do that assignment. Like, from that all the way to conceptualizing a difficult client or case. Or I think the other thing that's important is, and I think my professor last year really spoke about this in class, is to like be prepared at any minute to be like, maybe I didn't know, like maybe I was wrong, maybe, like you give it. And I think this came up in a spirit of like, you make an interpretation in a session, and you ask if it resonates. It doesn't resonate. It doesn't, like be just prepared to learn and have that humility, because they're unlike the corporate world where it's like, you need to know your stuff and you need to be excellent. And there is like sort of an apex. I think in this career, you're just always learning, and there is really no apex, I think.
I guess for incoming social work students, field can be intimidating, and it's new, and it's officially applying all the skills you're learning in the classroom, and application can be very different from learning the concepts. So I guess a challenge I had in the beginning was just staying open-minded. And for me, I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so I've always struggled with the journey, I suppose, compared to the destination. I like to be good at things, and I like to be at the point of comfort. But what graduate school has taught me more than anything is that we don't grow from a place of comfort. We grow from a place of discomfort, and there will be constant challenges in the world of social work, and I encourage all the incoming students to really embrace that.
Don't be afraid of the unknown. There's so many unknowns. Venture out into different populations, because I know sometimes we have our heart set on one population or one type of career, one field, and like don't be afraid. Right now, I worked with the middle school students. I work, so youth. Now I'm working with the older adult population. I can tell you it's not my favorite, right? It's not for me, but I'm happy to work with them. And I think given in a different agency where I felt more more successful and I was able to do more one-on-one counseling with them, I think I would love them a lot more, like that field, that population. But 100%, I think if you want to do it, do it. I think
100%.
as much as we advocate for mental health, we have to advocate for our own health. And that's a big one for me. Like you said, it's a very stressful process. This whole life is stressful. And I think being able to help your clients means addressing your own issues and taking care of yourself, because it helps you be a better person and a better social worker, 100%.
Challenge yourself into the areas that you've never explored. And that's another fascinating thing that I think surprised me, was finding interest in areas that I didn't think I would want to go. I took a phenomenal course with problem solving courts and, with forensic, social work. And because I've always been so clinically focused, I didn't.
So don't just stick with your usual comfort or what you think you're interested in. Go try something new.
Yes, definitely, go out of your comfort zone, try something that you didn't think was going to be, and just see, because that's one of the amazing things about social work, I think, as psychotherapists, we get to draw from so many different aspects. Again, it's the whole biopsychosocial approach that we do take. And it really, I'm just diving into that, and I love studying Eric Erickson. So that was probably one of the most fun experiences. So enjoy that.
He's an old but goodie. Yes,
old but goodie. Yes.
What is your future ideal dream job?
I do want to provide ongoing psychotherapy to people, and and ideally in like a community-based practice.
Okay.
With that, where the fee structure represents my principles around accessibility to folks that frankly need the service. So that's definitely something I want to do. I really enjoy that ongoing relationship.
Yeah.
I also really, there are other things that I would like to investigate and explore around the community, specifically the Arab immigrant and Muslim community, their mental health needs, and potentially explore if there is, and I know that there is something to say about this population.
Sure.
And so whether that involves, PhD, to be able to do the research and to say what needs to be said, then potentially that's another avenue as well. And that's definitely a population that I hope to work with.
Going forward, I know that you said trauma had originally been a clinical interest of yours. Where do you think you'd like to go? Would you like to stick with that? Are there other things that came to your mind, or you want to fine tune areas of trauma? What are you thinking about the future?
So I'm considering, my second supervisor, my second field placement is in LCSW, and she then also went on and got psychoanalytic training. So I had a very unique experience working under her and learning under her. So I do have some interest in pursuing psychoanalytic, furthering my education in that direction. And as I begin working, learning more about EMDR is something that I really want to get trained in. I'm very familiar. I've done a lot with DBT, but I want to get certification in that. I think cognitive behavioral therapy is great. And if it works for them and they're willing to do it, it's dynamite, but it doesn't work for everyone. I think it's really important, whether motivational interviewing, Devo, there's I think, just putting myself in a situation where I'm exposed to different modalities and interventions, and I think I love the work. So I think
sounds like this is just the beginning of your education. You're ready for some more.
Well, I think it's a forever learning, it's a forever learning. And that's another one of the things that I do love about it. I definitely feel right now, I've learned that I prefer working more with adults, young adults like 16, 17 and older. Youth are a little more, but yeah, I could see myself doing almost anything with that age range. And I'm excited to see how it comes together.
I would love to research and also practice within an area or a niche that I would be able to broaden the scope, or not broaden the scope, but really truly explain or express certain things. Epigenetics is one of them. We're also helping the acting community, which is where I hail from.
You did a great job with this little girl, and she's always going to remember you too.
She made an impact in me, and I think working with her and working with some of the other clients that I had in that middle school, their victories were my victories, and seeing them, I will say that one of my proudest moments was when she finally decided out of the blue that our sessions were not going to be in Spanish anymore, that she was comfortable speaking in English. That was and I remember emailing her speech teacher at the moment, and she goes, yes, she is making a wonderful adjustment, and her teachers noticed it, like the school staff noticed it, people that, again, this is her first year there because she's a sixth grader, and just from the first day of school to then, they were like, wow, like, who is that girl? That's not the same girl that we had in the beginning.
But that's because of you were that bridge to the English? Is that she started speaking English with you?
Yep. So our sessions were safe. It was whatever you wanted to speak. You wanted to speak Spanglish to me, I got it. You wanted to speak English to me, Spanish, however it was, we would work on it. If you had a question, if you had a word that you wanted to practice, we could practice on it. And we just started incorporating little things here and there, or like, oh, you said what word? I'm sorry, what word did you say? I don't know if I know that word in Spanish. Can I say it in English? And it just kind of happened. And then slowly she started transitioning the Spanish out, and we would do the sessions in English. And I remember being like, hey, are we speaking English now? Is that what we're doing today? And she was like, yeah, I don't want to talk it in Spanish today. I want to talk it in English. Spanish was her safety. It was like being home. Because at home is safe. Home is mom and her second mom, and that's the only language we speak. We only speak Spanish because that's home. And school is scary. Being with other people is scary. People haven't treated me the best, right? Sometimes. So for her to make that transition, that was a big deal. It meant she was confident in where she was, that she could stand her ground, defend herself, speak a language that she was nervous to speak. I'm not going to take the credit for that. But it makes you feel so good when you can like see the products, right? The fruits of your labor, of all this time.
I was very fortunate to have great supervision, and the space to write about it, and a professor that was brilliant, and gave us the space to really use theory for to conceptualize cases. And I love the theories that I used. Was genuinely, those theories genuinely speak to me. They resonate. They capture something that I can't put into words because these theorists have. And so I loved working with this client, and I loved the theory, and it was just a beautiful coincidence that I could use that lens to conceptualize the case.
Good evening. I'm Havina Allen. I'm the state membership chairperson for the New York State Society for Clinical Social Work. Like our scholars, I joined the society as a student member and quickly became active, serving on a chapter committee. For me, I found that the society offered more opportunity for engagement to student members than other professional organizations. That's why I chose to become an active member and have remained active for as long as I have. The society was founded in 1968 to address the growing needs of professional support for private practitioners. Today, our membership has grown to include students, new professionals, and agency-based social workers, in addition to those in private practice. Some of the important parts of our mission are to establish and maintain high standards of professional education and practice, to promote postgraduate and advanced training in clinical social work practice, teaching, administration, and research, to promote clinical social work throughout the state, to collaborate with other social work organizations and other professions on a national, state, and local level to further our common interests and with the goal of establishing connections with appropriate government bodies. We also work to inform the general public of the specialization and special skills that clinical social workers bring, and to protect the rights of clinical social workers to practice in the clinical manner in which we were trained. Among the notable achievements of the society are our collaboration with these other organizations to develop a code of ethics, legislative efforts to increase the role of clinical social workers in the delivery of services, and to grow and protect our profession. With the Society's efforts, 20 years ago, in 2002, New York State enacted a licensing system for clinical social workers. We continue to be leaders in providing education and support for the profession and are in the forefront of promoting the profession statewide. The Society offers an annual educational conference. Many of our chapters also provide education in the form of educational workshops and events. Many chapters have practice committees where chapter members can learn about various areas of practice and network. Some of the offerings that may be of interest to students and new professionals include mentorship groups in most chapters, our licensing study group, our annual graduation boot camp, where we talk about the next steps after graduation, including New York State licensing process and some job search advice, full access to chapter-based listservs, and lots of networking opportunities. Our scholarship program, like most society events, is made possible by our volunteer members. I'd like to thank the following members who took time to review scholarship applications. Thank you to Chris, Dorothy, Faith, Jeannie, Helen, Ursulia, and Susan. I'd also like to thank the many faculty and staff at the statewide MSW programs who also helped make this program possible. And now, if you're watching this live, please use the Zoom link that was emailed to you to join our after party where you can meet and congratulate our scholars. Thank you.